All right, peeps. This is for people who have a business, want to start a business, thinking about a business, and you have some questions because I got a question today and I want to have a little bit of educational moment for you. So here I am, Dr. Freisen, and I own multiple businesses and I have multiple types of businesses. I have a nonprofit, which is incorporated. I have LLCs. And then I have just a sole proprietorship. So I've had businesses at different levels. And I got a question about, can you do this on your own? Can you get your legal status formed on your own? Yes. Now, I just so happen to live in Florida. And so I went to the Department of State and Florida.gov and the different websites that Florida has to learn about how to do my LLC on my own. I did incorporate my nonprofit through a site. This is the second nonprofit that I've had. So I went through a company for incorporating this one. Now, the LLC, I did everything myself, and I even changed the name of the LLC myself. And you can do this in most of the states. You don't need a lawyer to do this. And then someone asked me about what's best to do. I'm speaking to you from what I've done in setting these businesses up. And there's reasons I set the different businesses up under these different structures. For instance, I'm a notary. I did not set my notary business up under an LLC title when I set it up. But when I set up my travel agency, I set that up under an LLC title. And I did it based on revenue potential and how much I was going to be doing notary assignments. In Florida, we charge $10 a signature to notarize something. And my thought process was, can I just file this as extra income on my taxes, or do I want to go through the process of doing the whole LLC if I'm not committed to it? If you are a person who's committed to having a notary business and doing all the things that you can do, because there's a lot of things you can do with it, I would suggest setting it up as an LLC. It would be a one person LLC if you're the only person who works in it. If you're in Florida, if you have a couple, multiple people working in it, then of course it would be a standalone LLC. The other thing I was asked is about, can you pay yourself with the businesses? When you have a sole proprietorship, that income goes with your regular income. So if you work a 9 to 5 and you have a sole proprietorship and you're selling things on the side, at the end of the year, you're going to get your W-2 from your job. And then you're also going to go through and do the Schedule C for your business and include that sole proprietorship information and with your regular income from your W-2. And when I speak of being a notary, I've been a notary since 2015, I think it was. Either 2015 or 2016, I forget which one. But during that time, I always maintained employment, full-time employment somewhere else. So I was doing weddings, like very few. I was doing notary jobs, notary contracts, different, but not on a major scale. But so I worked full time. So of course, there was no real need for me to break that out into its own thing. And I just took the earnings that I made from that and put it in with my regular income. And I say took the earnings from that because there's some things like companies that you might work from and they will 1099 you. If you're doing like loan signings, and I did loan signings and things like that. Up until this day, I still do notary work. And I do work with companies who 1099 my business, right? So then the other thing is, I was asked, now if you don't have a sole proprietorship, are you able to pay yourself? Yes, you can pay yourself when you have an LLC. You can pay yourself when you're incorporated. I would suggest that if you're going to go the method of paying yourself, it would behoove you to go through a third party company to where they pay you, they handle your payroll, because it can get a little tricky paying yourself from your LLC or your nonprofit, calculating all the appropriate taxes that must be paid, and the withholdings and things of that nature. If you are a one person LLC, might not be as big of an issue. When you have more people, it will become a bigger issue. And depending on where you live, there are companies that their sole purpose is to provide payroll services. I don't recommend anyone in particular. You just need to look for wherever you live. And then the other thing I was asked specifically about, what can you write off? Almost everything. I've owned a business since I was 16 years old, and I've written off so many things because you have to write off things related to the business. And most of the things that I do are related to the business. So, for example, if you have a courier business, you can purchase a car, and your car expenses, your maintenance, your gas, and all of that, your mileage, and all of that stuff can be part of your expenses and your taxes. Okay, as if that car is used for the business, right? Which I recommend, if you're going to have a business, get a vehicle dedicated to the business. The other thing that I was asked was about credit. And I've seen different people across the board talk about how you can get a credit with just your EIN. And this is true on certain cases, but it's not nearly as easy as how they make it out to be. You just walk in a bank and they just hand you money. It doesn't necessarily work that way. But you can get credit at your bank. I actually have multiple banks for my businesses. I actually have 3 different banks. And I was able to get credit with all 3 of the banks. So you can get a credit card, because I do have credit cards in my business names. And when I pay for things for my business, I pay for them using my business accounts. That's why when people want to send me money, like for my nonprofit, it's like, no, I really need for you to send it here, because it's really important to separate things. And every once in a while, I have someone send it to the wrong account, and then I have to make all these notes and send it to the right account, and for tax purposes. But when I travel and do things related to my business, I put that entire thing under my business credit card, or just to make sure I'm paying for it out of that account and not out of my personal account. And then people are like, well, what things can you write off outside of that? Well, if you have a building that you're using as an office, if you're using an office in your home, part of that home can be deducted. If you have a separate building like the one that I'm getting, or the one you see me filming in here, those are deductions, and that's based on the size and things of that nature. A lot of calculations that take place. So that can be deducted. If you have to make upgrades, buying equipment, equipment can be deducted, but it has to be written off over time. So I said to the person who was asking me today, I would never not own a business, right? It is, the way things are set up in the United States is really the best outcome. Even if you work a job, it's good for you to own a business, and take advantage of some of the tax deductions. Now, I'm not a tax expert and know all these different tax laws in all these different places. I live in Florida, so I know about Florida because my businesses have been in Florida. I had one business that was in Mississippi, and all of my other businesses have been in Florida. So I'm kind of familiar with what goes on in Florida, because over 20 years, that's where I've done business. Now, that being the case, is that God, it's longer than that. It's been over 30 years, because my ex-husband and I had a business here in Florida. So that being the case, go to the websites, go to the Small Business Administration, go to your Florida website if you're in Florida, Alabama if you're in Alabama, any other state, and look at the requirements. And when you look at the requirements, you should get an idea as to whether or not you can form your LLC on your own, or if you need to hire someone. Same thing with your nonprofit. You can form that on your own, or you can hire someone. Now, of course, somebody's going to see this video and they're going to say, well, what about a trust? Yes, you can establish a trust and things of that nature. I'm not an expert on that, so I can't tell you how to do that. I do know someone who has established a trust and put their businesses up under trust. And if I knew all of that, I would give you that information, but that's not my wheelhouse. So, hopefully this helps. Oh, and another thing the person asked me is why I have multiple businesses. There are multiple classifications on taxes. So for instance, a notary business is not taxed the same way as my therapy practice. Because a notary business, the state of Florida allows us to earn like certain things and not have to like pay taxes or be report income because you're in essence working for the state. So that's different on some levels than other things. And it's not that we don't pay anything, but it's they have some little exceptions because you're literally working for the state of Florida when you are a notary in the state. Versus anything else that I do is my business. It's not really for the state. They're like, you got to pay up. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do my taxes this weekend. That have to be done, my other taxes that have to be done. And that's another thing. When you have a business, you have more than just the taxes in April. So there's more to do. All right. Hopefully this video helps somebody.